Hey guys, welcome to Bella Jaclyns DIYs. If you are new to my channel or have yet subscribed, please make sure that you do and hit that notification bell. That way we can go ahead and you can go ahead and see my upcoming videos. So let's go ahead and get right into it. As you can see, my first project is underway. So on this first project, I decided to get one of the Dollar Tree large planter pots that they had brought out in the early spring. I had a couple of these and I had been wanting to make something with them. I'd just been putting it off, but as you can see, I did get this hula skirt it's the adult sized one from Dollar Tree, and I went ahead and attached it. So I'm using hot glue to basically skirt around the pot, and I wanted to make it looking like a hay bale without all the hay everywhere. So as you can see, I'm just using hot glue to secure it down to the pot because, you know, didn't want any loose ends on there. And then after that, I went ahead and started cutting it around the rim, and I left a little bit, probably an inch overhang, so I could go ahead and fold it over into the pot. And that is what you'll see I did. I did get some of those pieces that I did cut off, and you place them into that gap that I still had open, and just used hot glue, and I just did a couple pieces at a time until I got it covered up like the rest of the pot. And you can see I'm just gluing it down and still cutting a little bit of pieces. And so from there, that's what you're gonna see. I go ahead and did the overhang and glued it down. And so basically that is all I did. I did drill a hole in the bottom of that because you're gonna see what I did with it at the end. So guys, the next video is of course the pumpkin wreath for fall, and you're gonna see that I started using this orange mesh tool, and then I was like, it's not gonna give me the coverage I want, so I ended up getting this other mesh and started just gluing it around the pumpkin. I wanted it to be more of a see-through pumpkin because I am actually doing on the inside decorating rather than the outside. So I just cover it up until it's completely done with hot glue. And guys, please like and share this video if you do indeed and like it. As you can see, the stem of that wreath was already covered because it wasn't wreath that I had used last year, but the pieces started coming off of it. That's why I was like, we'll go ahead and reuse this and do something different with it. But I did leave the stem of how I wrapped it, and it's basically that mesh rope and that from Dollar Tree with the cute little pearl beads in the center. Sorry guys. And so after that, I was deciding on what I wanted to do next. Decided that I was going to go ahead and use some of that mesh rope again, but this time I was going to use the darker of that mesh brown, so it could actually like texturize the pumpkin and give it the lines, you know, the pumpkin lines. Well, I did that last, but as you can see, I went ahead and used the those leaf garlands, and I glued it inside of the pumpkin. I wanted, like I said, I wanted it to be see-through, and you can see now I'm using that darker brown of the mesh rope, and I'm just using it along the wreath wire, and using that as my guide to attach it with hot glue. I'm all into the oranges. Like, I'm really into the doing more of the fall colors. Stick with the traditional orange decorating this year. Last year it was, I think I added blues to it, and I'm still using some blues in some of my decorating, but I'm just, for the most part, it's mostly going to be orange that I'm gravitating toward to this season. And of course I'm using that mesh rope around the outer part of the pumpkin, and just making sure I cover that up. And next thing we are doing is I am adding some leaves. Oh, I added some of that mesh around that brown one just so it could tie it together. And then I added some leaves to the stem as well. Now you can see I'm adding a dowel, or these were large skewers that I had purchased, and I don't even remember where I got them at, but I got some large skewers, and I was gluing that down because I want to keep it hollow. I just want to use the leaves, and then I'm going to use put this gather sign into it just to place it in there. I'm not trying to keep it on there, but this is one I had last year, all white, but I wanted to again go with the orange, so I just did a rough color paint of orange on it. And so as you can see it together, all together, we got the hay bale, the pumpkin, and the gather sign all together. Alright, in this next one you're going to see that I am actually making a fall gnome, and this I took a pumpkin that a pillow I had made last year, and I was like, it was a small pillow, so I was like not really decorating with it because it was too small. So I decided I would cut it in half, use the stuffing inside, and just shape it into a gnome, and just cut it down. And here I am just gluing it, making sure it's how I want it to be stuffed. And I tied a little bit of a lace ribbon bow on there. Then I got some of this fabric material from Dollar Tree for fall, and I actually triangled it, glued it together, turned it inside out, and added it to the top of the pumpkin. As you can see, I am hot gluing the gnome's hat to the top with that raffia, or the hula skirt that I did cut. I used some of it to actually use as the beard for the gnome, and there I am just cutting it and adding it and placing it where it needs to. And I got a little cute little diamond bell to add to it. I thought I was going to put it in the pumpkin at first, decided not to because it didn't look right. So there you go. See, I'm tying a lace bow at the top of the gnome hat. And then to make it sturdy, I ended up using a wine cork coaster that I had, and I don't use them because they're too thick, so I ended up gluing it to the coaster so it could stabilize it. And you will see now that I have stabilize it, and here it is. I did cut the beard a little bit, and that is my little... Alright guys, so on this next project, as you can see, I do have 3 pumpkin stands that I did purchase. These I wanted to make a topiary out of, but I did kind of a hanging topiary, so you'll see at the end. But as you can see, I'm not doing the typical painting of these. I didn't want to mess with paint all that much during this project, and so I did get those Dollar Tree craft paper for the fall season. 3 different styles, well actually 2 from Hobby Lobby, and I did put those on the 2 main ones. As you can see, that first one was for the little pumpkins, that was from Hobby Lobby, and of course this checkered one is also from Hobby Lobby. Then I put on the bigger one, and basically I just Mod Podge it and glued it on there, cut around it, and let those glues dry while I worked on this next one. This next one I did get a cutout from the Dollar Tree new 2022 fall calendar. Well, it's not the fall calendar, but it's the 2022 calendar, and I went for the October month, and they actually have some real pretty designs, and I decided to use it on this palette pumpkin. And I wasn't going to cover the whole pumpkin. I decided to actually cut along the lines and basically use that to piece the picture on to the pumpkin, because I actually liked that whole idea of the palettes. So as you can see, I'm just trimming it down, trimmed each end a little bit smaller so it didn't overhang, and I just made sure it lined up correctly on to each picket, I would say, and just make sure it lined up as I Mod Podged it. As you can see, I did cut off a little bit right there at the edge because it wasn't much of a gap that I cut into the paper, so I had to fix that. And I just did it until they all lined up, and at which I actually did love the way this turned out. I did cut around it, any overhang that I had, and I let that dry while I worked on the next step for these pumpkins. I got the 2 bigger ones. I love the way that these came out together, and I actually got some Mod Podge spray adhesive and sprayed it down, let that dry for a good 20-30 minutes. I was gonna put Epsom salt, but I didn't like the way it looked, so I went ahead and just put the spray on, let it dry, came back, and I worked on the stems of each pumpkin. As you can see, I was working with the nautical rope, went with the darker one instead, and just went around the stem and actually had it flared out into the pumpkin. And then I added some to the center, same thing with hot glue, and move that aside. Then I moved on to the next one. With the next one, I did have this paper napkin that I did get from Home Goods, and it was on sale for clearance for the end of summer, and I loved that it had the checkered, so I went ahead and added that to the stem. I did struggle with it for a minute because there was like 3 layers of paper for that napkin. Didn't realize it, and so I had to play around with it a couple of times. First I used the hot glue, didn't work with hot glue, and then I went ahead and did Mod Podge, and you can see I'm sanding it down, but it was not working. So you guys are gonna see all the flaws in this video with this one. So I actually removed the hot glue that dried up and did a little bit of cleaning, and then went ahead and cut it down, pulled the paper layers off, and this time I Mod Podged it. So I was like, the hot glue did not work with it. So just FYI, doesn't work really good with napkins in my opinion. So I just trimmed around it till it got the shape of the stem. And then for this one I did get like a deep maroon burgundy ribbon, and I just wrapped it because I wanted to throw a little bit of color since it was black and white and give it a little bit of that color to it, and just added that to the stem. Wrapped it all the way around with hot glue, and so I let that completely dry. Next thing I did was, there I go fixing that piece that didn't cover through on the stem. So I let that dry. So now here I am gonna paint around that pumpkin that is checkered, and I'm actually using just some black acrylic and just doing like a shadow around it. And from there I am going to just deepen the black around the pumpkin. And I just used the apple barrel, I think acrylic is what I used. There I'm just using a highlight to white squiggly around the pumpkin, and just deepen it up, and just to give it a little bit of highlight, and so from there, let that dry, and I am now creating the first bow. This is just a basic messy bow that I made, and I used any kind of ribbons that you have that's fall colored or the colors you're going with. You can use however many layers. I think I used about 6 to 8 layers of ribbon, and it was 4 different ribbon colors, and then I tied it down with a pipe cleaner, and then shaped it, and then I went around with the rope mesh from Dollar Tree. And all of those are from Dollar Tree, that ribbon, so you can find those at the Dollar Tree. But if not, if you find them somewhere else, you can use any one you want. So that pumpkin did have that grateful sign on the other side. I went ahead and removed it and removed some of the glue off of it, and then I just glued it, centered it onto the pumpkin. I am going to actually highlight it a little bit with probably black shadow. I didn't do it in this video, but just so that you can see the word grateful, because it doesn't come through on the pumpkin. Next one, I moved on to the next pumpkin, and just creating 3 different kinds of bows. This is just more of a loop bow that I made. And they're all 3 different bows, but I used the black and white checker from Dollar Tree. Then I used this orange mesh ribbon, and then I used this black and white ribbon that I got that's not wired, as well as that burlap orange from Dollar Tree. And so I glued it on. This one was more of a messy bow that I just wrapped around and glued on top of that looped bow. As you can see, I'm just wrapping some of that small ribbon and just gluing it in place. Loved how that one looked. And then for this one, I just used 2 ribbon. Well, it was the burlap ribbon that I had, and then I did a shoelace ribbon, and I just glued them together, put a little sparkle bead on there, on the top, just cutting it in place. And so I couldn't decide if I was going to do a tiered topiary, meaning put them to glue them all together. I was kind of struggling with that. Just working on the removing that hot glue that was all over. And as you can see, I struggled with it. I was playing with it at first, that I was going to glue them all together. As it goes with the spray adhesive, or the Mod Podge spray adhesive, it did not, on top of those pumpkins, it did not allow me to really use hot glue on those pieces, so I was struggling to get them to glue to each other. And I was trying all different kinds of techniques, and even put wood glue on it, put even popsicle sticks to try to glue them to each other, and they weren't working. So what I went with was, I decided to make it a hanging bow. As you can see, I took it apart, but I made hanging topiary, and I used the nautical rope, and I just basically just layered it on top of each other, put it how I wanted to, spaced it on the rope between all three, and at the end I ended up cutting off whatever excess rope I did have and used that to make a loop on the top pumpkin so that I could hang it. And now it is hanging. It is a hanging topiary pumpkin, and I loved how it turned out. It just turned out so cute. All those colors, I didn't think they were gonna look good, even the top pumpkin. I loved how that turned out. That palette pumpkin turned out awesome. So there's a close-up of it, of them together. Alright guys, this is the end of my video and a recap of what I created in this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please give a thumbs up, as well as subscribe to my channel so you can see what other projects I have coming up. Until next time, I will see you guys. Happy crafting!